do I need to do to become a U.S. citizen? What do I need to do?
What do I need to do to become a U.S. citizen? What do I need to do? What do I need to do?
There we go. Thanks, Ronald. All right. To everyone joining us on Facebook, nobody there yet. I guess it would have been good to have them here a little while ago. Okay, we've got some people filtering in now. Welcome. I'm Attorney James Betzold. We're doing a live here today in English. We're answering your immigration and immigration-related questions. I'm an immigration attorney, which just means I'm a regular awesome attorney, and I do immigration. That's sort of my specialty. I know all sorts of legal stuff. We've sued the government before, right? The federal government, we've taken them to court, and we have won 10 times, right? Typically related to immigration causes, immigration cases, getting work permits for individuals who have been waiting for too long. We actually got some good precedent set here in the Sixth Circuit. Barrios Garcia is the name of the case, and I believe it ended up being, was it Barrios Garcia v. Holder v. Smith? I don't know. They changed the name of the Attorney General while we were in the case. So, welcome. Any immigration questions, please feel free to put those in the comments today. We've been talking a little bit about what you need to be ready for in your USCIS interview. Okay, and just for the benefit of everybody who's on Facebook and you, I wonder if I'm not supposed to say TikTok while on Facebook. And now it's telling me there's a Wi-Fi issue. Couldn't connect. Oh, looks like well, we're still live on TikTok. Okay, we had an internet hiccup, looks like. And we're back on Facebook and YouTube as well. All right, so we've been talking about the USCIS interview, what to do, what not to do. And like I was saying before you get to a USCIS interview, if you're using an attorney, you're going to have an attorney interview as well. About attorney-client privilege. You may have heard of this before. You may have seen this in movies, maybe a gangster movie. If you've ever seen Better Call Saul, this topic comes up there as well. All right? So here's the constitutional protection that you have when you go to consult with an attorney in the United States. Under the Constitution of the United States, the Sixth Amendment says you have the right to the representation of an attorney. And what that means is anything you tell an attorney that is a privileged communication, right? It's private, it's between you and the attorney. That is something that you cannot be forced to testify about later. So if a client comes to me and says, I committed a certain crime, which we can't say in detail here on the socials because we'll get banned, but if I did this or that or the other thing, I cannot go tell the police. That's against the law. I could lose my license, okay? If the police find out that that person came to talk to me, they cannot call me as a witness to tell them. In fact, they can try, but they would be sadly disappointed in court because you can't do that. Now, there is an exception to that rule. And if the communication was not private or privileged, that means, for example, if somebody else is in the room, then it's not private anymore. And when they ask me under oath, I have to answer. The way attorneys protect themselves from running into this problem is when a client comes in to talk to them, we'll say, I'm going to meet with the client, and in our case, the immigrant first. If it's necessary, we will invite your spouse or your friend or your son or your daughter or your whoever else is accompanying you. We'll invite them in as well. But it's not always necessary, and it's not always wise. Now, in the immigration context, in our office, we run into this somewhat frequently, where it could be a husband and a wife come into the office and, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to meet with the immigrant first, and we'll invite you in later if it's necessary. And when I'm talking to the spouse, I'll be asking, hey, tell me about the relationship. Is there any history of abuse? Is there any history of extreme cruelty? Can you leave the house when you want to? Are you free to live your life? Are you being threatened with anything? Are you being threatened with immigration? Have you had to call the police on your spouse before for any domestic violence issues or assaults? Have you ever committed a crime? These are things that the other person, the other spouse, might not know, and we might want to keep private. And if the spouse is there, I'm not able to uncover that, especially if the client or the immigrant is feeling intimidated and will not disclose fully information that will help me help them. So when you go, especially in the immigration context, to meet with an immigration attorney, be mindful of that. If the attorney says, hey, hang here for a few minutes, we'll be right back, I'm going to meet with this person first, be gracious. We're just trying to help. And if we find any sort of resistance to that, that becomes a red flag for us. It doesn't have any particular defined consequence, but it is definitely a red flag, because as much as you're, analyzing whether you want to hire this attorney or not, the attorney is going to be trying to consider whether you would be a good fit for them, whether you would be a good client as well. So that's just something important and fun to be aware of. All right. I want to encourage everyone who's watching us on TikTok, please share this live. We're giving free legal information right now, and here on Facebook and YouTube, we are also ready to answer your questions. If you have any immigration or legal, we'll even run into politics now since we're doing this in English. Any questions like that, I'd be happy to answer them for you. I am running a little thirsty though. All right. So again, any immigration related questions, throw those in the comments. When we're talking about meeting with USCIS, there's a few basic points I want you to know. First of all, if you're not, or if your family member is not going to be speaking in English, you need to bring a professional, licensed, certified interpreter. Somebody who's licensed in your state to be an interpreter for these situations. It should be someone who has experience with these particular type of immigration interviews as well. There's paperwork they're going to need to bring, and you need to make sure that you're not related to the interpreter. It used to be more like the Wild West, right? You could bring anyone who could reasonably interpret. The problem there, at least the problem for immigration, was they didn't want somebody who was biased to be helping the person who was supposed to be just giving the answers and having only their answers translated. Okay? They didn't like that. They thought it was going on, so they made the requirement. No, it's got to be a licensed interpreter that's not related to you. The other requirement is if there's more than one person who needs an interpreter, they should each have their own. An officer may make an exception. It may be okay, but the technical requirement is that they have their own as well. All right, everybody joining us on Facebook and YouTube, please, any of your questions you have, throw those into the comments. I'll be happy to answer those for you. And to the multiple people on TikTok, again, any questions you have, please feel free to join. I'm a licensed immigration attorney, so I am an attorney in the United States, licensed, went to law school, passed the bar my first try, licensed here in the state of Michigan, and I can take cases for immigration cases all across the country and all across the world. All right, we got a question here from a Mr. David. Do you think the upcoming elections will affect current or future immigration processes? David, 100% they will. Yeah. We usually like to think it in terms of good and bad, right? One candidate is either going to be good for immigration, one's going to be bad. Sometimes that's a very simplistic view to have. However, we know what it's like to live under the Trump administration because 4 years ago we were. And that ended in a complete disaster. Almost, when we're talking about the sanctity of elections, almost a complete disaster for that awesome tradition we have in the United States of the peaceful transfer of power. So, yeah, we know what it's like under Donald Trump. And I can tell you that as an immigration attorney, it's pretty hectic. Every day waking up and finding out that there's a new policy, a new memo, a new head of USCIS, a new head of DHS, and then realizing that the people that were getting appointed, they were being appointed in violation of law. So all the dumb policies that they were putting in place, like this incredibly bad interpretation and legally incorrect interpretation of what a public charge is, like what somebody who's too poor to be granted residency in the U.S., by interpreting that horribly, and coincidentally, interpreting it the way that a lot of the fascists in the country would have liked and did like, it was kind of disheartening, because all of a sudden we've got all these new requirements, hoops we got to jump through, at the same time considering federal court action that we're going to need to take. And even if we win, it's going to slow down the immigration process for many of our clients. So I think the upcoming elections for immigration are essential. What else did we see under the Trump administration? We saw the Remain in Mexico policy, and that was disastrous for people who really needed to apply for asylum in the United States. It was disastrous because it actually helped start new cartels, the Jalisco Nueva Generación, for example, as one. We would translate reports of things that people were suffering down there, which included kidnapping, extortion, and all sorts of abuse. Because now there's all these people on the border that these cartels can exploit. If we had just let them come in and do what we were going to do anyway, let them apply for asylum, it wouldn't be the same. Those people would have been safe. That cartel never would have had as many people to exploit. Life would have been better for many people. So that's another thing, the whole Remain in Mexico policy, the whole problems with asylum cases. There were a number of legitimate asylum claims. For example, there was a case that said, if you're a woman from a Central American country and you're subject to domestic violence and you can't escape it, right? And you've probably tried to escape it, but you can't because the man keeps hunting you down, the police aren't protecting you, and you've gone to the police and they're not protecting you. It's like a pretty terrible thing that goes on down there. In fact, I've had clients where they'll say, well, I went to the police for help and they told me I should just be nice to him and make him his favorite meal and put him to bed and then maybe everything will be fine. Instead of, whoa, we're going to go arrest him because he beat you senseless, right? So legitimate asylum claims were denied because the Attorney General, I'm not even going to tell you his name anymore. I'll just call him the duende, the little elf, because that's what he looked like. He actually took these cases that said these were legitimate asylum claims, and he took them to himself, and he said, on my own, I'm going to say, no, these are illegitimate now. Now nobody can do this, right? And that was only undone after subsequent court cases and until we had Joe Biden as president. So I think that's another thing that would be really bad. Now, there's people who say, well, he's going to build a wall. We want to build walls are a great thing. Okay. I mean, you can build whatever you want. You can waste money if you want, but I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but you can dig under walls. You can go around walls. You can climb over walls. In some cases, you can torch right through a wall. Okay? Walls are, at best, a temporary Band-Aid. They're not a solution to immigration issues. If we're going to talk, I don't know if anybody's good with American history or war history out there, but does anybody know, and put it in the comments if you do, what General Patton said about fixed fortifications, right? So talking about building things like walls or pillboxes or cement obstructions to try and obstruct the advance of the enemy. Does anybody know what he said about that? I guess we can pull up the exact quote here as well, if somebody wants to enlighten me. Patton quote on fixed fortifications. I remember this because it showed up in Call of Duty. Call of Duty 2, so I'm talking old school Call of Duty. Here we go. So one thing he say is, here we go. I found the exact words here. So what General Patton said about fixed fortifications, he says, fixed fortifications are a monument to the stupidity of man. Okay, so it's not a solution. Looks like we had another internet hiccup over there. We're still connected to Facebook and YouTube. Live is connected again. All right, we're back. We had a little bit of a disconnect there. Everyone can keep joining here. Thank you. And let's keep this going. All right, so yeah, so talking about Trump, I mean, he really focused a lot on the wall. I don't know what's going on. I've got a strong Wi-Fi signal. Maybe because I mentioned a general. I wonder if I'm going to get points for that or something. We'll find out. We're still learning here with the whole TikTok thing. But when we're talking about it, a wall is something you can build and you can point to and say, look, I did that. It's big, it's beautiful, it's the most amazing one I've ever seen in the world, and it's just great for everything. However, in terms of really being effective, I mean, no. You go around it. You go over it. You go through it. You go on. Yeah. There's ways to get around that. But sure, I mean, it's a waste of money. Couldn't connect. Trying to reconnect now. All right. Keep getting bumped here for some reason. Thank you for following Adriana Guzman. Thanks for following us on TikTok there. Chrissy, Ronald, thank you everybody for joining us there. If anybody has any more questions, I can go for hours about Trump though, and like how this is actually not good for immigrants if he were to win, right? And I would say for many people, probably the first time around, they were a little more open-minded to what he was saying about immigration. And we all know that in a political campaign, you need to say what you need to say in order to win. But now, because he's had a term, we know what he would do. And it's been pretty much a nightmare. I mean, there was the Muslim ban. You're going to ban a whole religion from coming to the U.S., right? You had that to deal with, which is just terrible for people. We had the medical COVID being used as an excuse to ban people from coming to the United States, even though they're not a proven transmission vector. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. I think the cost for immigrating went up under Trump. The cost for hiring an attorney went up under Trump. The cost for, I mean, even groceries, shoot, that all went up under Trump because of all the massive spending we did during COVID. So I think there's a pretty strong case to be made that, yeah, the elections will affect this. Now, let's talk about DACA. I know people who, when DACA happened under the Obama administration, they were opposed to it. They said, no, this is amnesty, this is terrible, we don't want this. Well, many of those people who said that, if they've ever met someone with DACA, they have a different opinion of that now. Okay? So we have to deal with that. People who are here on DACA, that's a program that's still alive. Anyone who has DACA can renew it. However, due to Republican, like literal conspiracies, not even like secret conspiracies, but like the attorney generals from multiple states literally filed the same lawsuit, all joined in the same lawsuit to try and stop DACA from continuing from those who already had it. And what they were able to do is they were able to stop new people from obtaining. That's the current state of things right now. So if you go to Google News or the USCIS website, you'll find that you cannot file a brand new application for DACA. You can only renew it if you already have it. No new applications, only renewals. That's huge, right? For someone who came here as a baby and doesn't really know another country as home, and now they finally can work and live and have a social security number and have driver's license. And it's amazing. It's amazing how life changes for people when they can get those things. And I would say let's talk about some other programs that existed for like 3 days, I think it was, before they got shut down. Literally, it's called Keeping Families Program. Now, in U.S. immigration law, there is something called parole authority. Okay, in U.S. immigration law, we have what's called parole authority, where the president, through his agents at the heads of the administrations, they can authorize the lawful entry of people into the United States for humanitarian reasons or for the public good. What more public good could there be than keeping families together? That's literally the motto of my law firm, uniting families through immigration, okay? And I know there's many people that are concerned about the everlasting soul and want their whole family to be together forever in heaven. Well, our firm's focused on the here and now, right? So this Keeping Families Together program gave people who were married and had lived in the U.S. for 10 years, so married to a U.S. citizen or resident, here for 10 years, that met some other requirements so that they could get their papers here in the U.S. without having to wait what is now 4 or 5 years and be separated from their family during that process. It simplified it. It made it way more efficient. All this stuff could be done electronically now even. Well, many of the parts of the application could be electronic. Minimal burden on the government. Easy to prove who's eligible and who's not. And this whole program is sort of put on pause. We can actually file these applications still, and immigration will get the fingerprints for the person. They'll process it as much as they can. But they're just not allowed right now due to court filings, due to a judge's decision staying the program. They can't issue any approvals for it until that court case is resolved. And the only reason that court case exists is because there's a lot of Republican governors and attorney generals from different states in the United States who said, we don't want to do anything good for immigrants because whatever their friggin' complaint is, right? And of course, it's coming from the same people who negotiated, the Republican representatives and Democrats negotiated an immigration reform bill, which was ready to pass, and Donald Jerk Trump told all his Republican buddies, we don't want the Biden administration to have a win, pull it. The Republicans were already getting what they wanted, money for border, money for more judges. There's like over 1 million pending immigration court cases, and there's nowhere near enough judges or even ICE prosecutors to handle that, right? So they were getting everything they wanted, more Border Patrol agents, more funding for security at the border. And they put the kibosh on it. It never made it to Biden's desk for signature because the Republicans tanked it. So for them to try and say anything serious about, we do care about immigrants, we just want it done the right way, a bunch of liars. Like, I can't take it seriously. So this is like when I see anybody who's openly supporting Trump, who's a representative or something like that, I just have to think, where do your loyalties lie? Because you were taking the advice of a man who doesn't hold public office when you guys already negotiated a great deal, and then you tanked it. And that's their fault. So we can only assign blame where it belongs. And I think, I don't know, have I talked enough about immigration, or not immigration, about Donald J. Trump? I hope I've convinced you, at least shared some helpful information, because there's no doubt in my mind Donald Trump would be an absolute disaster for immigrants in America because he would be the worst, simply a terrible people. He's a joke. The whole situation is garbage. Everybody thinks so, right? And that's no exaggeration. We lived through it before. And probably the worst. I got one more thing. Okay. And you can listen to, and I'm surprised Joe Rogan didn't talk about this when he was interviewing Donald Trump the other day. Because it was Donald Trump and his buddies in office that he placed there. And they were all on board with separating families, right? So as an attorney who, it's my job to unite families through immigration, he was using immigration to literally rip babies and children out of the arms of their mothers. That's sick. Like, no matter what, I don't care if they cross the border unlawfully. You're going to rip a child away from their parent? You're a psychopath. And that's all there is to it. Not good. Not even a good, I could say I can judge your quality as a human being by that act alone. And I think that would be enough to disqualify someone from ever becoming president. I would hope so. Election's coming up. We're all doing our part, I hope. So do yours. All right, let's move along. Any other questions? Let's hear some questions. I keep getting bumped on TikTok here. It keeps disconnecting and reconnecting. But it's okay. I see. There we go. Take another sip of water here. For purposes of making shorts later, out of this videos, I did want to talk again, and I know I did this on the TikTok side. I want to do it for the Facebook and YouTube side. I want to talk about the ways that your interview with USCIS can end. And typically we're looking at 3 or 4 ways that it can end. First of all, the interviewer, if this is a citizenship case, for example, could say, hey, everything looks great. You're going to be approved. You're going to get your invitation to your swearing-in ceremony in the mail in a few days. Congratulations. You walk out, everyone's happy. The other thing that can happen, whether it's citizenship or a family petition or an adjustment of status, the interviewer may say, it looks great. I need to check with my supervisor. Because not all of the agents are the same level, right? They've got supervisors that have to double check their work if there may be a newer employee. So we have to wait for the official notification to come in the mail. Could be a few days, maybe a couple weeks afterwards. Something else that can happen is during the course of the interview, the interviewer, the immigration official, could come across information where they say, you know what, I actually need some documents about this, that, and the other thing. Could be interaction with the police. Could be a police report, could be a court record, could be maybe a birth certificate or marriage certificate. If there's some information that was missing, they can say, well, I'm going to issue what's called a request for evidence, gather that information, send it to us, and then we can make our final decision. So that's another thing. Of course, then there's always the denial, the straight up denial, which is unfortunate, but there's ways to appeal it afterwards. So if the immigration official says, you know what, I looked at your case and I don't think you qualify because of A, B, and C. So I'm denying it. Here's a paper. If you want to appeal this decision, you've got 33 or 30 days to do so. Okay, in which case, go find your attorney right away if they weren't with you, because that may be appropriate to appeal. Immigration officials get things wrong from time to time. I've seen it. We had a client who had a medical exemption, so they wouldn't have to take the citizenship test in English. And they had a learning disability. It was diagnosed by a psychologist and a medical doctor as well. When they got to the interview, the officer said, hey, how do you spell San Francisco? Well, my friends, let me tell you about the words San Francisco. They're Spanish, just like my client, so they knew how to spell it. But that was not a test of their English skills. And the USCIS officer is not a doctor. Guaranteed they're not a doctor, okay? So we had to appeal that and we won, right? Got that turned around. Citizenship approved, happy day. But that's another thing that can happen. You may end up with a denial for one reason or another. Try and remember all the details, any documentation, bring that to your attorney. Now, the other thing that can happen is probably what we would call the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario consists of the interviewer saying something like, hey, actually, before the interview started, I noticed you have a removal order or you have a deportation order in your file. I actually have ICE waiting outside. You're going to be going with them. Okay, that happens less these days, but it still does happen. So if you're filing a petition and you've got a removal order, highly recommend you meet with an attorney and go over the possible courses of action. There are things you can do to minimize your time outside the United States or to avoid getting removed from the United States as well. Okay, but it's hard to do last minute. You definitely want to be prepared for that. And the second worst thing that can happen is like unto it, which is, I see some problems with your past. We're going to refer you to ICE or to the removal department, but you don't have to go with them today, but we're denying. And then you've got to deal with that. So again, a situation where you find an attorney and you get things cleared up. All right, we've got people sharing the live. Thank you so much for sharing that live there on TikTok. Getting a lot of views now. Over here on the Facebook side, I want to know if anybody else has any more questions we can answer. The subject today is immigration. Specifically, we're talking about USCIS interviews. Maybe you have a story, maybe you want to share something about that, a question about that. I think one of the important things we can discuss now is whether you actually need to bring an attorney with you to a USCIS interview. And I will give you the typical lawyer answer, which is maybe. I'll tell you how we do it in our office. if you're going for your citizenship, and you, I mean, English skills are up to you. There's nothing I can do to help you with the English questions during the interview. You're not allowed to look at me. I can't like make hand signals or help you with that. I'm only there to make sure things go well. So if you're going for citizenship and there's nothing complicated in your past, I will tell you, hey, I'm going to save you a couple grand. You don't need to pay me. I don't need to go. You go on your own. Tell me how it goes. If anything weird happens, let me know. That's our standard operating procedure. Now, if in the preparation of the case I discover things that could be an issue, then we'll adjust accordingly. Someone who has a significant immigration history problem, immigration fraud in the past maybe, criminal history issues, anything like that, I will make a recommendation based on the severity of those circumstances. As a general rule, if I don't need to go, I will tell you. If it would be just for your comfort or convenience, we're both going to be very clear on that. I'll do a good job sitting there, reviewing things as things are happening, making sure it's a fair process. But it's a maybe, and it's a not always. There are some situations where if you have a removal order and you're getting called in for an interview because of that to USCIS, yeah, your attorney should go with you. If you're going to be called into an ICE interview, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, these are the guys who want to remove you from the country. There's things you can try from the legal standpoint as far as requesting a stay of deportation. That may be worth it in your situation, but again, it depends on your criminal history and your immigration history and your family situation and things like that. It could be a way to buy some more time. It could be an option. And then definitely, yeah, you should have an attorney to help you with that, because you may only get one chance with that. All right. Thank you for sharing the live. Thank you for sharing the live. All right. I want to know if you have any more questions, right? We've been talking about a number of things here. And for the moment, I think I've shared everything about the interviews I wanted to share. Well, since I don't see any more questions come in, and I think we're at a good stopping point as well. So we've hit 30 minutes at least, over 30 minutes on the Facebook and YouTube. On the live, we're coming up on an hour. All right, so we're going to wrap it up. I want to say thank you to everyone who participated today. Thanks for scrolling in and joining us. Please follow us on TikTok. We'll be releasing some shorts with helpful information regarding immigration law. We also have a fun little show, Ciudadano Ya, that we do. It's a Spanglish show with trivia for those wanting to become a U.S. citizen. And again, we are going to regularly do these lives. If you have questions, please feel free to add those in the comments. I'm Attorney James Betzold. My law firm is visafeliz.com. You can call us at 833-VISA-FELIZ. Let's throw the banner up here. Oh, I should probably create one for this. Watch. 1-833-VISA-FELIZ. Watch this. We got a toll-free number because we wanted to be cool. There we go. I spelled it wrong. That's no good. We're going to edit that. There we go. Okay, 833-VISA-FELIZ is our phone number. Right? You can get a hold of us. You can schedule an appointment with us. And our website, visafeliz.com. Right? Lots of information there. We'll be adding a number of new features to that as well. So thanks for joining us. We hope you have a great weekend. Hope you got a lot of candy last night for Halloween. Hope the kids are having a good time. Thank you for joining us.